So Toastmaster, ladies and gentlemen, Sushil was a miser. Though his treasure chest was full, he was too stingy to give away even the smallest coin. So since food cost money, Sushil ate almost nothing, and he starved himself and his family besides. So one day, Sushil had gone for a walk in the morning, and he saw this young person eating a sweet rice dumpling. And he thought to himself, oh my, how I would love to have a sweet rice dumpling to get my wife to make one. But if I wanted a sweet rice dumpling, then my wife would want one as well. And if she wanted one, the kids would want one. And if the kids wanted one, the servants would as well. So I better not say anything about these dumplings. So he went home after that walk, but he couldn't stop thinking about this sweet rice dumpling. And his mind was really agitated, he felt really weak. And he went to bed that night, and his wife noticed something wasn't quite right. So she asked him, Sushil, what's the problem? What's the matter? And Sushil said nothing. But her intuition was telling her that something wasn't quite right. So she persisted. Sushil, what is it? There's something on your mind. Why don't you tell me? And then Sushil's face turned red and then purple, and he just squeaked very meekly. I would really like a sweet rice dumpling. And then his wife looked at him and said, certainly, Sushil, we are wealthy enough to make sweet rice dumplings for everyone in the town. Everyone in the town? Said Sushil. Do you want to make a pauper out of me? And his wife said, okay, fine, Sushil. How about dumplings just for us and the servants? The servants? Why would the servants need dumplings? He said. Okay, how about just for us and the kids then? The kids don't need dumplings, said Sushil. Okay, Sushil, how about just for me and you then? Do you really need a dumpling? So Sushil's wife, whose name was Nirmala, sighed and walked away in disgust. However, a couple of minutes later, she did return with a sweet rice dumpling, which Sushil devoured with glee and delight. But she wasn't the only one watching this. Saka, who was the king of heaven, was also watching this, thousands of miles high up in heaven on his marble throne. And he thought to himself, never in 1,000 years have I seen someone as stingy as this fellow. I'm going to teach him a lesson, he thought. So the next day, when Sushil went out for his daily walk, Saka decided to come down to earth. And he came down to earth looking just like Sushil, wearing his clothes and behaving like him. And so when Sushil had gone for his walk, he walked into Sushil's house, and in Sushil's voice, he said to the servants, servants, go out into town and invite everyone over. Today I'm sharing my wealth. And when his wife heard this, she was shocked. She couldn't believe her ears. She said, thank the heavens for my husband's change in heart. Can this possibly be true? And so she was really excited about this. And she, along with Saka, went to the treasure house to open up the treasures. So as expected, within a few minutes, all these town people were rushing into Sushil's house. And Sushil was there to welcome them with open arms. And he said, come on in. And if you do see someone who looks just like me, chase that scoundrel away. And so the people were obviously very grateful, and they said, thank you, Lord Sushil. You're the most generous man alive. And they helped themselves to all these diamonds and pearls and gold and silver. So as expected, when they were leaving the house, the real Sushil came in. And he said, come back here, you thieves, you devils. How dare you take my stuff? He was obviously quite flustered and annoyed by this. And then the townspeople said to each other, this must be the scoundrel Lord Sushil told us about. And they chased him halfway across town. So Sushil had to run to Raja's court. Now Raja was the majesty, the king of this town. And Sushil burst into his palace and said, Your Majesty, these people have stolen my goods. And Raja was a bit bewildered by this, and he said, how come? I heard your servant go and invite all these people. Didn't the order come from you? Certainly not. Why would I possibly do something like that? Said Sushil. Please send your messenger to go get my servant, because I want to find out who gave him this order. And so the Majesty sent his messenger to Sushil's place to bring the servant back. And as expected, the servant did come back, but he also brought Saka, who was still posing as Sushil, along with Nirmala and the children. So this whole group was there, assembled there. And obviously the kids were amazed to see two people who looked exactly like their father. Nirmala almost fainted, and the Majesty was shocked beyond words. He said he couldn't say anything. And then at that point, he looked at Nirmala and said, Nirmala, which one's your husband? Who's the real Sushil? And Nirmala stepped forward, composed herself, and said, Your Majesty, can I ask them both a simple question? Certainly, go ahead. So she looked at Saka and said, Saka, who is it more important to be generous to? Your friends, your family, your neighbors, or your servants? And without any hesitation, Saka quickly replied, to everyone. Because the more generous you are to others, the more generous they'll be to you, and everyone will be wealthier. And he was pleased with his response. So then she turned to Sushil and said, Sushil, my husband, who should you be more generous to? To your friends, to your family, to your servants, or to your neighbors? To no one. It's a waste of wealth that can never be regained. So having heard both responses, Nirmala gathered her kids and moved towards Saka and said to the Majesty, Your Majesty, this is the real Sushil. How dare you, Nirmala? My wife, my children, said Sushil, obviously quite upset by this. And then Saka stepped forward, and with a flash of blinding light, he turned into his real god-like self. And he said, Your Majesty, I'm Saka. I came down from heaven to teach this fellow a lesson. And then he looked at me. Sushil was looking down at his feet. And he looked at Sushil and said, Sushil, you're so stingy. Even your wife and kids have turned away from you. And Sushil said nothing. So he continued. Well, I'll give you one more chance. Will you be more generous in the future? And Sushil quickly replied, yeah, I could possibly be a little more generous. A little more generous? Okay, maybe a little more than a little more generous. No, that's not good enough. You have to be a lot more generous, or else I'll be back. And with that, he disappeared. And then the Majesty looked at Sushil and said, looks like you learned a good lesson today, Sushil. And then Sushil replied meekly, yes, Your Majesty, I suppose I did. And then he looked shyly at Nirmala and put out his hand and said, my wife. And then Nirmala was a bit upset about what she had done. She took his hand and said, Sushil, my husband, let's celebrate. Let's make sweet rice dumplings for everyone in town. At which point Sushil looked down at his feet. He groaned. His teeth were clenched. He turned red and he said, all right.